Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important election of your lifetime. We can talk about a whole host of issues. We can talk about the state of the economy and where we are. And yes, we need strong families. We also need an atmosphere in which the economy can grow. I was very excited at the President's speech last night. I actually was. Because the President of the United States made the case for Rick Santorum for being the nominee of the Republican Party. What did the President lead with? Now remember, we all know this was a purely political speech. This was a speech designed to go out and after different voter groups that he thinks are key for him to win the election. We all agree with that? Okay, what was the first voter group he went after? The one he spent the most time on? The one that he was going to do the most to try to help? Manufacturing. Blue-collar workers. Well, who's been running their campaign for president here on the Republican side of the aisle saying, we need to focus on upward mobility. We need to focus on small town and blue-collar America to create the ladder of success through manufacturing jobs to be able to rise in society again. Whose plan was called by the Wall Street Journal supply-side economics for the working men? Barack Obama knows the key to this election are the swing states, in particular in the industrial heartland of our country. The Reagan Democrats, those blue-collar Democrats who swung for Reagan and provided a 49-state victory. Those are the folks who are being disaffected by policies that are crushing the manufacturing and processing sector of the economy through regulation and taxation, through environmental policy that is destroying the ability to make things in this country, to produce energy, to keep those energy prices down. He knows his policies are destroying and making it difficult for those folks to get employment. And he knows that they're the ones who are on the bubble as to what direction they're going to swing. He also knows that these folks, for the most part, don't agree with him on some of the core values issues. I come from southwestern Pennsylvania. I grew up in... Any Steeler fans in here? All right, we got a few. All right. Steeler Nation. Anyway, oh, come on now. But I come from southwestern Pennsylvania. I'm the grandson of a coal miner. I grew up in a steel town, as Chris talked about earlier. I lived on a VA post in an apartment, public housing. It was a great place to grow up. I grew up with veterans, grew up with folks who worked in the mills. This is my heritage. This is where I come from. This is who I am, and I'm very, very proud of it. Well, I can tell you, he knows that, well, you heard it when he gave this speech in San Francisco 4 years ago. You may remember it. It was in one of those private meetings where there was supposed to be no audio equipment or no cameras, and someone recorded. This was right before the Pennsylvania primary. And what did he say? He said he's worried about losing Pennsylvania because of all those people who cling to their guns and their Bibles. And thank God we do cling to those guns and Bibles. We cling to those guns to protect our rights, and we cling to our Bibles to remind us where those rights come from. He's out of touch with their values. But his party has always been one that has economically tried to orient themselves and try to be for the working guy. Not anymore. He's for the Wall Street guys. He's for the big bailouts. He's for Dodd-Frank that's going to keep those big banks going. He's for Wall Street. He's for the radical environmentalists who have shut down now the Keystone Pipeline that would create a lot of blue-collar jobs in this country. He's doing everything through the Environmental Protection Agency and a whole host of other national labor relations to crush job creation in this country for the very folks who have looked at the Democratic Party for years, like my grandfather did, to look after their interests. They don't anymore. They don't. We need to be the party that says to each and every one of those folks who agrees with us on the basic values of our country that conservatives and Republicans want to create an economy, want to create an atmosphere for where the economy that employs folks who want to work with their hands and their minds to be able to succeed and rise in America. That's why the president started out talking all about manufacturing. Who does that tell you? What does that tell you he's most worried about? What kind of candidate would be the biggest threat to him? What kind of candidate would go out and talk to those voters on a values level, talk to them about the work and the opportunities that we're going to create as conservatives? And now they can vote with both their heart and their mind and their pocketbook for a Republican nominee who can defeat Barack Obama. We put forward a plan that cuts the corporate tax on manufacturing to zero, that takes the money that if anybody sent their jobs offshore like Apple, and if they bring them back, you pay a 35% tax, but if you invest it in plant and equipment under our plan, you have a 0% tax. Trillions, over $1 trillion coming back to invest in plant and equipment. We've cut all the tax rates for corporations in half, other than manufacturers and processors. Make it simple. There's another key thing. The engine of growth in America is small business. And whether it's taxation or regulation, the bigger the government gets, the more complex it gets, whether it's Obamacare, which must be repealed, by the way, whether it's Obamacare or Dodd-Frank or a whole host of other regulations. They're regulations that the big corporations can hire 100 lawyers to find a compliance department together to be able to figure out how to implement this. Yeah, it's a cost. But for the little guy, he can't hire 100 lawyers. He's got to do it on his own or with his local accountant who is overwhelmed by the volume and complexity of what this administration and frankly others have put on them. And so what happens? The little guy gets crushed and can't compete, and the big guy gets bigger. The idea that the left and Barack Obama are for the little guy, for the small business guy, it's a joke. Remember this, and it is an absolute truism. Big government loves big business. And the reason big government likes big business is because when you concentrate a business sector in one or two or three big companies, it's much easier to dictate to them how to run their business. You can put regulators right in the company. If you're a big company, you have IRS agents in your company. You have regulators in your company on a regular basis. The government can keep very close watch on you. It's a symbiotic relationship. If you're the little guy, big government hates little because they got to chase you around. They got to find out where you are. They got to spread out. They don't like that. They don't like little people. And by the way, the big guys don't like little either. They don't like innovation. They don't like people nipping at their heels and making them do things that the big behemoths don't want to do. The Republican Party used to be, years ago, the party of big business. It is no longer, and in my hope and dream, it will never be again. It'll be the party of the people, the party of the small business, the working men and women of this country, families, communities. That's the future. The best way we make sure that we are not going to be the party of big business is to get big government to small government. And that means we've got to make dramatic cuts to the federal government. I put the boldest plan out there to cut $5 trillion over 5 years.